am Terra Newell. I am a survivor of Dirty John Meehan. I was attacked by him at the age of 25 years old. So my mom met John on a website called Our Time. She met him because she was alone and all her kids have left the nest. We were always hypercritical about who she dated. However, she was alone this time and she just met this guy. They went to this place called Houston's, this restaurant in Irvine. She had the best date of her life and it just seemed so great. He went back to her place with her, and my mom is so innocent that some guy going back to her place, she's thinking about connecting with him, not thinking that something might lead to something else. So he got on her bed, he made her feel uncomfortable, and she asked him to leave. After that, he got upset at her. He left, he stormed out, and she thought she would never see him again. And then the next day or a few days later, he called her up and he smoothed things over, apologized for everything, and wanted to see her again. She allowed him back into her life, and then she began dating him. And later on, we found out that there were many things about him that were not right. He did not present that quite at first, though. He just was very standoffish at first. He didn't really want to get to know me. And he just gave me closed-ended answers when I asked him questions about his daughter, about his job. The only thing he really wanted to talk about was my medical history and kind of give me a diagnosis for what I was going through at the moment. From the moment I met him, there was something off about him. He just didn't want to engage with me like my mom's past relationships had. A lot of her past relationships, even the ones that were not great, really wanted to get to know me. And I was her youngest daughter. And so that was an important factor because I was the one that was going to be around the longest, in a sense, in the household. The day before Thanksgiving, I expressed concerns to my mom about him driving her car, about him possibly living in the house that she bought or she was renting at the time. And I expressed these concerns to her. And right after that, in the doorway, he came up behind her and started yelling at me and cursing at me. He told me that I wanted my mom all for myself, that I was just jealous, that I wanted my mom's money. And I yelled some slur words back at him. And I told him, "No, John, that's what you want." And from there were a few more words exchanged. My ex-boyfriend at the time, Jimmy, he was approached on the matter as well. And he gave feedback that he didn't think that this was normal, what was going on. There was something not right. And unfortunately, we packed up everything and we went to stay at my sister's and didn't spend Thanksgiving with my family. The day before Thanksgiving, there was a box of personal items that I found in the closet that we were staying in the guest room. And I opened the door to the closet, and inside there was a bunch of John's stuff, a bunch of John's personal effects, as in, I believe there was a birth certificate in there, but on top of everything in plain sight, there was a nursing certificate. And so I had brought that up to my mom's attention when she was in the doorway as well, thinking that he was moving in. However, I caught on to something, not knowing I caught on to something. I thought that he could also be a nurse as well as an anesthesiologist. And so that arose concern for him because he thought I was finding him out. That was the first time that he wanted to get me out because he saw, oh, she's feeding into her mom. She's going to say stuff to her mom. She's already saying stuff to her mom. I need to get her out of here. I went home to Vegas. And when I went home to Vegas, I fell into this deep depression because my mom and I stopped talking afterwards. And from there, because of everything, I was usually the person that got along with everyone. And so that even rose a little bit of concern to my family as well. And there were things that happened after Thanksgiving that my family didn't like. And so they started to see more and more. So my brother-in-law hired a private investigator. And my sister Jacqueline was already starting to look into him. However, she had a professional now. And that really brought up a lot of concern because when we got back everything from the private investigator, we found out that he had different social security card numbers, that he had different nursing license in a sense or something like that. I don't know how he was able to fake it. He had different information on so many of his past victims and still current victims. He had this fridge, and inside this fridge, there was a backpack and a storage. In Cathedral City, there was a backpack inside the fridge. And in the backpack, there was a child's book. There was duct tape, and there was zip ties, and there was stuff to make chloroform. And so this rose a lot of concern. So my mom ended up leaving John one time after we found out all this information on him. And my mom went and lived with my other sister, Nicole, my sister that ran my mom's company. And from there, she was in hiding from him for a bit. However, he was able to get a hold of her, and he met up with her and brought her to a lawyer. And this lawyer explained to my mom that everything that we found out on John Meehan was actually different John Meehans. That was not true. However, I think it was calculated that John moved to Orange County because there was also another doctor in Orange County named John Meehan. I had feelings that he was a terrible person. I had feelings that he was a con artist. I had feelings that he was addicted to drugs because I had a past relationship that was tumultuous. It was rocky, to say the least. And that person ended up hitting me with a car when I was 19. And so I saw different signs from that relationship in John. John made a comment to my cousin that he could shoot my sister with a sniper rifle. And my cousin, his aunt was murdered by his father. And so that caused a lot of concern to him because that is not the person that you joke about that with. And then there was things that happened as well the night of Thanksgiving, or the night I left, the night before Thanksgiving. When I went to my sister's, John had taken my mom's phone and was sending messages from my mom's phone as if he were my mom, telling my sister that she should that off the building head first would be preferable, and that she shouldn't be here, and just an array of awful comments towards her. There was a lot more that came out, and John went through a spiral after my mom left him the second time. He ended up stalking me, stalking my sister, stalking my mom. There was little signs where I felt like I was being followed, and I couldn't quite pinpoint it. but I know for a fact that he did stalk me when I was hiking, because he called my work one time and he made an appointment for 2 Rhodesian Ridgebacks to get groomed on August 20th, 2016. So he made the appointment for that date, and I took in the appointment. However, he called at a time where the dogs were all barking at me and it was a feeding time. So I didn't get all the information that I normally should have, like a phone, a name, and also possible credit card information to hold the appointment. I didn't get all of that like I normally do because it was just, he caught me at a bad time. He called in this fake French accent as well, and I could tell that there was something off about it. However, I did meet 2 Rhodesian Ridgebacks on the trail, and so I thought that it could be those dogs. And because of him calling and making that appointment, I knew that he had seen me at the trail. It came the day of August 20th, 2016. I go into work, I'm trying to get everything done. The dogs are actually a no-show, so that throws off my schedule. And I go home from work, and as I'm driving home, I get home early. I go into the gate, and the gate's broken. And then right there is a guy, and he's fiddling with a tire iron, and my dog's barking at him and going off on him. And I pull into my space. I tell my dog to knock it off. And then I get out of my car. And then that's when John grabs me by the waist, looks me in the eyes, and says, "Do you remember me?" And then there I ended up fighting for my life. I ended up getting stabbed once in the forearm, once in the chest, and one artificial one on the face, or superficial, one superficial one on the face that looked like a paper cut on my face. And I ended up stabbing him 13 times, 11 times in the upper chest. I didn't really remember that, and it's still hard for me to connect the dots to see that. But the last 2 I ended up remembering because I gave those some thought. I ended up killing him as if he were a zombie. I just felt like he could have got my nieces. I felt like he could have went after one of them. I knew it was going to be me. I had dreams about this happening, actually. And so it was weird where the knife landed. It landed exactly on my right-hand side, right by my hand. Didn't hurt me. It just landed and fell in its place. And it was as if God, my angels, or whoever was watching over me, because I kicked it out of his hand and it landed exactly where it was supposed to be. There was more people that came after that. There was a guy with dreads. He was on a bike, and then he gave me his sweater that was red to slow down the bleeding. And I remember it being red because I was thankful that it was red because it was the color of blood. And then there was another girl that showed up, Skylar, the 14-year-old lifeguard, and she watched from her balcony, and then she told her mom to call 911, and then she came running down to help. She had told me, "Hi, I'm Skylar. I'm trained in these types of scenarios. What is your name? How old are you?" And just started asking me questions to get me out of the state of shock. And I started answering them. We had the same birthday, July 3rd. And I started looking at the guy who started to do CPR on John. And I had to get away from that. I had to get down the hill or the ramp. There's like a ramp that goes up to the parking structure. And I went down that ramp, and then Skylar is helping me get down it. And I keep telling people that he tried to kill me. That was John. He tried to kill me. That was my stepdad. He tried to kill me. That was my stepdad. He tried to kill me. So that people would get that he was the perpetrator, and that if they went and tried to help him, that he could also try to get them. And I thought that if they were doing CPR, they couldn't listen to me to stop doing that. So I had to protect myself and get down the hill. And it was up to them if they wanted to listen to me or not. And John was brain dead because of me stabbing him in the brain, in the eye. And then I called my mom. I told her, I'm so sorry. I think they killed your husband. I knew that he would do this. And then my mom goes and she says, What? Terra? And then she starts to come on her way from where she's at. And that was about 3 miles away. And then I call my ex-boyfriend, and then he's not answering because he's working bar rescue and he doesn't have service. And then I texted him and I said, I can't believe you blocked me. John tried to kill me. And then he called me, and then, we were all in fear for this. And I literally would come down to LA when he was staying at his friend's house down here. And even though we were broken up, like I would come and just stay with him just for safety at certain times. And so it was hard. It was scary. And everyone kind of knew that was in my orbit that something could or might happen, except for certain friends. Like there's some friends that you tell everything to, and then there's friends that you go out and party with. And those friends that I went out and party with thought I was crazy. They didn't believe me. They thought I was making stuff up. I felt like a pariah after. And I was in the hospital for a day and a half to 2 days. I spent 2 nights there, and they had to do exploratory surgery on me because of where this wound was in my chest. But I wasn't bleeding out or anything. It didn't puncture any major organs, didn't puncture any organs. So I was good. And I was really lucky where I got stabbed in my body. And especially with the attack I went through, I know other survivors that have gone through different attacks, and literally their fingers are cut off from them trying to defend themselves. So I was in Austin, Texas. I had done a good amount of EMDR therapy. I was going through my healing journey. It's funny because you get to a point where you feel healed, but I didn't have to work. I just had to focus on my healing journey. And I remember ending up getting into a relationship and then messing all of that up again, and then realizing I'm not really healed. The LA Times hit us up. I was in an okay spot, I felt, until I started going through the story again and not realizing how hypervigilant I am, how on edge I am telling the story. I remember coming back to California and doing calls with Christopher Goffard. And then it was supposed to be a series of articles for the LA Times. It ended up being a podcast series with the LA Times. They ended up selling it when we were just talking to them. And I found out that they were in the works, probably sold it for around, I don't know this number, like like, I don't know this number 100%, but I want to gauge around 3 million that it was sold for. I did not get a single penny from that. Because it goes into journalism, because it's the LA Times. And so, but we didn't sign anything at first. And then eventually the series comes out. It's a big hit. Now I believe it has over 170 million listens. And now the RSS feed is The Crimes of Our Time and not Dirty John. And it's interesting to me because I have no control or say in that story, even though it is my trauma being publicized everywhere. And then they ended up selling the series to Bravo for 2 seasons. And the first season was going to be about John, and the second season was going to be a different Dirty John-ish story. And then that's when I ended up selling my story rights to them and consulted on that series. And that series, I was happy to consult on. However, I felt that I was given a choice that I could participate or not participate. And they could use my story with or without me because of me doing the series of articles with the LA Times and them owning that information that I gave. The cops called on me one night because me and my sister got into an altercation. And the cops basically told us, you have to do something. And so I packed up all my bags and I went to Texas to stay with my other sister. And she just had taken off time from work. She could be with me the whole time. And she found a therapist for me. I went to a therapist 2 days a week, did EMDR for about 3 months straight. And I really uncovered a lot. And it's crazy because even before John came along, I was getting into therapy. My relationship that I was in for 5 years, that was failing. And when relationships fail, there's a lot of awareness about what you need to work on. And so that was kind of even the start, and just like continuing to go and work on it as I had this big trauma happen and my brain chemistry changed. And so I had to figure out how to heal from that. And then it's just a consistent ongoing journey. Like you get to one place, then something else comes up from childhood or from your attack, because when you feel safe, your brain will allow you to see what you couldn't see before. And so it took years, and I'm still going through the healing journey. However, I realize that my body isn't as reactive, where at first I would run away from certain men. And now I'm teaching puppy yoga as well, and having to talk to men and not be scared of them. I have heavy intuition. I feel that it stems back to women and the caves and us having our intuition and having to guess when the cavemen will be back from hunting. It literally stems back to our DNA. You know, we have more cells in our stomach than a dog has in its entire body. And dogs are so intuitive. We just have to listen to our intuition. And I feel that when I'm able to listen to my intuition, it's when I'm working out, I am having my schedule, I'm having my boundaries all in line, I'm not overbooking myself, and I'm just eating healthy, and I'm doing my whole healing journey. I have some stuff in the works, but if you feel like sharing your story and you need help in sharing your story, please hit me up. I do free 15-minute consults for any survivors out there, just so I can give them resources or give them a little tidbits on what they need to work on or where to go or who to even connect with that's a survivor like them.